One of the biggest lies people tell themselves after an avoidant breakup is that their ex walked away untouched, that because they looked cold, distant, or indifferent, they must not feel anything. But here's the brutal truth. Avoidants pay a heavy price when they lose someone who truly mattered, and that price doesn't show up in tears on day one. It shows up in silence, in regret, in the way the emptiness creeps in once the distraction wears off. You may not see it on their face, but the cost of losing you begins the very moment they realize they can no longer control the game they used to play with you. The first painful price they pay is the collapse of their illusion of control. Avoidants thrive on the idea that they can pull away, withhold affection, disappear for days, and you'll always be there waiting. But when you're truly gone, when you no longer answer calls, when your silence lasts longer than theirs ever did, it shatters the belief that they were in charge of the connection. They lose the sense of superiority they fed off, and instead they're left staring at the reality that their strategy has cost them the very thing they secretly craved, someone who understood them and stayed despite their walls. They also pay the price of regret. Avoidants are masters at suppressing emotions in the moment, convincing themselves that pushing you away was the right thing to do. But over time, suppressed emotions have nowhere to go. They start leaking out in quiet moments, while lying awake at night, while seeing something that reminds them of you, while hearing your laugh in the echo of memory. Regret hits avoidance late, but when it hits, it's merciless. They replay the moments they sabotaged, closeness, the nights they pulled away after you opened up, the times they could have chosen love but chose fear instead. That regret becomes a ghost that follows them long after you're gone. Another price they pay is emotional emptiness. Avoidants often believe that independence equals strength. They think detachment makes them immune to heartbreak, but when you're truly gone, the silence they once weaponized turns against them. Suddenly, the bed feels colder, the conversations feel shorter, the distractions don't hit the same way. They told themselves they didn't need you, but the absence proves otherwise. They start to realize that the walls they built to keep love out also keep them trapped inside with loneliness. Avoidants also pay the price of comparison. Every new person they meet, every shallow connection they try to build, will be measured against the bond they lost with you. And here's the painful part. Avoidants often sabotage new relationships before they start, because deep down, they're still haunted by the memory of the one who saw through them. They may pretend to move on, but their new partners can feel it. The ghost of you is still in the room. This comparison robs them of the joy they thought they'd find by leaving. There's another hidden cost, the erosion of their ego. Avoidants pride themselves on not needing anyone, on being untouchable. But when the person who once gave them unconditional patience, affection, and understanding walks away, it cracks that ego wide open. Because deep down, even if they'd never admit it, they measured their worth in your willingness to stay. Losing you forces them to face the truth that they're not as invincible as they pretended. It's a bitter price, the realization that their games only proved how fragile they really are. Avoidants also pay with time. Time becomes their enemy. In the short term, they may distract themselves, dive into work, or chase fleeting pleasures, but time has a cruel way of peeling back every layer of denial. As weeks turn into months, the silence gets louder. They notice the patterns they once took for granted. Your messages, your laughter, your presence are gone for good, and with every passing day, the truth sets in deeper. They can't rewind, they can't replay, and they can't undo what they lost. Another price they pay is the exposure of their own fear. Avoidants live by the story that love is dangerous, that vulnerability equals pain. But when you leave, they're forced to face the emptiness their fear created. They don't just lose you, they lose the safety of their own excuses. For the first time, they have to confront the possibility that their avoidance isn't protection, it's self-destruction. And that realization stings harder than they'll ever admit. They also pay in jealousy. Even if they never show it, avoidants burn inside when they see you moving on, when they see your glow returning, when they realize you're thriving without them, because the avoidant mindset depends on you chasing, on you being hooked by their push-pull dynamic. The moment you're no longer hooked, they feel replaced. And nothing cuts deeper for an avoidant than realizing the person they thought they could keep on a leash is now out of reach, happier, stronger, and untouchable. Avoidants pay the price of unspoken craving. They crave the intimacy they destroyed, the emotional safety they once mocked, the unconditional acceptance they didn't know how to receive. When you're gone, those cravings intensify, but instead of reaching out honestly, they bury them deeper, masking them with pride, and that buried craving becomes a quiet torment, gnawing at them in every silent night and every failed attempt to replace what they lost. Another painful price is the collapse of their fantasy. Avoidants often live in a world of what-ifs. They convince themselves that if they left, they'd feel freer, lighter, happier. But once the fantasy collides with reality, they discover freedom feels empty without connection. They realize that the grass wasn't greener, it was barren. That collapse leaves them bitter, confused, and restless, unable to admit that the fantasy was a lie they told themselves to justify their fear. They also pay through isolation. Avoidants tend to push away the people who care most, and when you're gone, they often find themselves surrounded only by shallow connections. They realize too late that the person who saw their soul, who stayed despite their distance, is no longer in their life. That isolation isn't just physical, it's emotional exile, and the deeper they sink into it, the more they realize what they've thrown away. Avoidants pay the price of mistrust, but this time, it's mistrust in themselves. Losing you forces them to face their patterns. They realize they can't trust their own instincts because their instinct to push love away left them empty-handed. This mistrust makes it harder for them to build new connections because they no longer believe in their own ability to love properly. It's a cycle of self-doubt that only deepens with time. They also pay in shame. Beneath all the pride and coldness, avoidants carry shame for how they treated you. They replay the broken promises, the sudden silences, the boundary tests, and eventually it sinks in that those behaviors weren't signs of strength, but of weakness. That shame lingers, coloring every new relationship they try to build, because deep down they know they failed, the one person who gave them more chances than they deserved. Another heavy price is the loss of growth. Relationships force us to confront ourselves, to grow, to evolve. When you're gone, avoidants lose the mirror you held up to them. They lose the chance to face their wounds in a safe space. And instead of growth, they stagnate, repeating the same patterns, stuck in the same cycle, never learning the lessons your presence was trying to teach them. They also pay with longing for the intimacy they pushed away, for the laughter they once brushed off, for the small daily rituals that built the bond between you. That longing becomes unbearable at times because avoidants aren't good at creating new bonds that match the depth of the old ones, so they live haunted by a constant ache for what they lost, even when they pretend otherwise. Avoidants pay the price of hidden obsession. On the outside, they may look calm, detached, or even happy. But internally, they replay your last conversations, stalk your social media, or wonder what you're doing without them. This obsession is silent and secret, because admitting it would mean admitting they still care, but it eats at them nonetheless, proving that avoidance never erased the attachment, it only buried it deeper. Another painful cost is the destruction of trust in their own narrative. Avoidants tell themselves that love is a trap, that leaving was the smart choice, that independence is freedom. But once you're gone, and they feel the emptiness, the craving, the regret, that story collapses. They're forced to admit that the avoidance strategy didn't save them, it destroyed them. And that realization creates a crisis of identity they'll never confess out loud. They also pay through sleepless nights. Avoidants often live in distraction during the day, but when the lights go out and silence takes over, the truth haunts them. That's when the memories flood in, the sound of your voice, the warmth of your presence, the comfort of knowing you were there. These memories keep them awake, gnawing at the edges of their pride, reminding them that the loss is permanent. Avoidants pay with envy. They envy the way you move forward, the way you rebuild, the way you glow stronger without them. Even if they never admit it, they're watching. And each step you take without them feels like salt in the wound. This envy isn't just about you, it's about the realization that they sabotaged their own chance at happiness, and someone else may now receive what they threw away. They also pay with a fractured identity. Avoidants often define themselves by their ability to stay detached, but when they lose someone who mattered, they can't help but feel the crack in that identity. They're no longer the person who doesn't need anyone. They're the person who lost someone irreplaceable. That fracture lingers, reshaping the way they see themselves in every future relationship. Another painful price is nostalgia. Avoidants replay the good moments, the laughter, the intimacy, the quiet nights, and the more they replay, the more they realize those moments weren't just ordinary. They were rare. They were irreplaceable. Nostalgia becomes a double-edged sword, comforting because it lets them feel close to you again, but torturous because it reminds them they can never have it back. They also pay in emotional confusion. Avoidants aren't used to feeling the full weight of their emotions, but losing you forces those emotions to surface. Love, regret, shame, jealousy, longing, it all collides in a storm they can't process. That confusion paralyzes them, making it harder to move on, harder to love again, harder to trust themselves. It's a torment they keep hidden, but it corrodes them from within. Perhaps the greatest price they pay is realization. The realization that they didn't just lose a partner, they lost a chance at real connection. They lost someone who saw through their walls, someone who gave them patience, someone who wanted to love them despite their fear. And that realization doesn't fade with time. It lingers, reminding them that avoidance didn't protect them, it robbed them. And finally, the ultimate price your avoidant ex pays is emptiness. The games are over, the silence no longer works, the walls no longer protect. All that remains is the hollow echo of what they destroyed. They can't say it, they won't admit it, but deep down they know. Losing you wasn't freedom, it was a wound they'll carry long after you've healed. And while you rise, while you rebuild, while you grow stronger, they're left behind, paying the painful price of avoidance, a debt that never truly disappears.